Commissioner Gordon, Bane has escaped.
A different kind of wealth begins the moment you stop measuring life through possessions and start measuring it through capacity. Capacity to focus, capacity to endure, capacity to create where others consume. Money is only the byproduct of a mind trained to see opportunity where others see routine. Real wealth is a pattern of thinking that refuses to stay small. It grows in silence long before it grows in the world. It sharpens itself through responsibility, not comfort. It turns pressure into direction instead of collapse. This shift does not look dramatic on the outside. It begins with a single decision to stop living reactively and start operating like someone building something that stretches beyond today. The secret is simple. A wealthy mind is trained to multiply whatever it touches: time, skill, energy, possibility. The world notices that before it ever notices the bank account. True abundance forms when you stop trading effort for escape and start trading effort for evolution. People who understand this do not chase rewards. They chase mastery. They chase clarity. They chase self-respect earned through consistent action. Money follows them because they create value instead of waiting for it. The mentality behind it is ruthless in the kindest way possible. It refuses victimhood. It rejects entitlement. It denies the comfort that convinces people to stay small. Growth becomes the only acceptable currency. Your standards rise. Your emotions stabilize. Your ambition stops collapsing under doubt. This internal environment is the real treasure. Everything external is simply a reflection of this inner architecture. Inner wealth begins when you stop living from impulse and start living from intention. The average day becomes a battlefield where attention is the prize. The person who controls attention wins. Wins clarity. Wins time. Wins decisions. Wins opportunities invisible to distracted minds. A wealthy mind knows exactly what to ignore. It is not seduced by noise. It is not pulled by shortcuts. It protects its focus the way a warrior protects his shield. This protection is not rigid. It is strategic. You learn to shape your environment so it works for you rather than against you. You move with purpose that cannot be faked. And slowly, the world shifts around your discipline. A powerful mind treats boredom as a forge. It knows that deep work thrives where distraction dies. It understands that consistency compounds faster than talent. It sees patience not as waiting but as weaponry. When others crave stimulation, a wealthy mind embraces repetition. That repetition becomes expertise. That expertise becomes leverage. Leverage becomes freedom. Freedom becomes potential. This chain reaction is the core of the mindset. You are no longer fighting for results. Results are fighting to attach themselves to you. That is the quiet dominance of someone who thinks generationally rather than emotionally. Self-worth becomes the central engine of this era of growth. You stop negotiating with insecurity because you now understand that insecurity is a story, not a sentence. You replace fear with competence. You replace hesitation with action. You replace excuses with direction. This transformation is not loud. You do not broadcast it. You live it. People feel the difference before they hear the difference. Confidence becomes a natural byproduct of keeping promises to yourself. Integrity builds the kind of foundation no external storm can break. That foundation is wealth, internal, stable, unshakable. The wealthiest thinking emerges when you stop treating failure as identity and start treating it as feedback. You learn to dissect mistakes without attacking yourself. You learn to pivot without losing momentum. You learn to endure without losing enthusiasm. Every setback becomes a classroom. Every challenge becomes a training field. The mind adapts faster because the ego complains less. You rise because you no longer waste energy defending your limitations. That shift alone separates entire futures. A person who is willing to learn will always outrun a person who is desperate to look flawless. Strategic solitude becomes a non-negotiable part of your evolution. Not isolation, intentional withdrawal. Moments where your mind can think without interference. Moments where your decisions are governed by clarity rather than emotion. People who operate at high levels understand that silence is not emptiness, silence is recalibration. The wealthiest minds in history used solitude to sharpen vision, detach from noise, and protect their identity from being shaped by the world. In that silence, direction appears, priorities align, purpose strengthens, clarity becomes fuel. That clarity is wealth. Your environment becomes the silent sculptor of your potential. A wealthy mind shapes its surroundings rather than being shaped by them. You curate what enters your eyes, your ears, your thoughts. You choose associations that challenge you rather than drain you. You position yourself in rooms where ambition is normal, not mocked. These choices accumulate quietly but transform everything. You no longer survive your environment, you engineer it. You no longer drift with the current, you build the current. That shift is the foundation of every life that rises beyond average. You start seeing life not as a sequence of tasks, but as a system. Systems scale. Willpower breaks. A wealthy mind builds habits that remove friction and routines that eliminate decision fatigue. Discipline becomes a structure, not a burden. You automate what doesn't matter to free energy for what does. And with each passing day, momentum grows. Not through force, through design. The world begins reflecting your intention back at you, one opportunity at a time. Value is the currency the world respects, and focus is the furnace that forges it. When someone directs their attention toward creation instead of distraction, they begin producing results that compound across years. Wealth gravitates toward those who refine ideas, solve problems, and build things that outlast their moods. Yet most people drain their own potential by scattering attention across meaningless noise. Every notification steals a fragment of their future. Every hour spent scrolling enriches the architects of distraction while impoverishing their own mind. Focus is not a soft concept. It is measurable energy. It is mental fuel capable of building empires when directed with intention. When given away to trivialities, it funds everyone else's dreams while bankrupting your own. The shift begins when you recognize that your attention is the goldmine others fight to control. Protect it, and you begin stepping into the secret of millionaire mindset. Distraction-based living turns a person into unpaid labor for corporations that monetize their impulses. Billion-dollar platforms thrive because millions of people donate their focus for nothing in return. This is not an accident. It is a system engineered to redirect human ambition into endless consumption. But value creation demands the opposite. It demands that you channel your focus into something that produces momentum rather than drains it. When someone chooses deep work over dopamine, they instantly separate themselves from the masses wandering in mental fog. This separation becomes their advantage. They build skills instead of addictions. They build leverage instead of loops. They build a future instead of numbing the present. And in that difference lies the secret behind the mindset of abundance. Attention is a finite resource, and the world competes aggressively to steal it. Those who guard it rise. Those who waste it fall into patterns that feel comfortable but lead nowhere. Focus transforms into output. Output transforms into opportunity. Opportunity transforms into wealth. The formula is simple yet painful to accept because it demands accountability. Every hour given to distraction is an hour taken from excellence. Every hour given to creation is an hour invested into freedom. People who understand this stop treating focus casually. They treat it like capital. They invest it wisely. They track where it goes. They protect it from erosion. This mentality is the foundation of the secret of millionaire mindset. Noise is seductive because it feels productive. Endless input feels like learning, but learning without application becomes mental clutter. Meanwhile, those who commit to one direction produce clarity. They produce mastery. The world rewards mastery because mastery solves problems no one else can solve. Noise produces commentary. Focus produces solutions. Solutions generate wealth. When someone chooses to shut out noise, they reclaim the mental bandwidth required to create something meaningful. They stop being a spectator of other people's achievements and become a producer of their own. That shift is the turning point between stagnation and growth. Your focus determines your fate. Every great builder in history depended on long stretches of undisturbed concentration. These stretches allowed them to connect ideas others never saw, refine skills others abandoned, and finish work others only admired. Focus shapes identity. Identity shapes action. Action shapes destiny. When people give away their attention carelessly, they give away their potential. But when they channel it deliberately, they create momentum that compounds over time. Eventually, they become the type of person others study rather than ignore. The secret of millionaire mindset emerges from this internal shift. Wealth gravitates toward those who make something rare. Noise is abundant. Value is scarce. Value requires thought, innovation, and the courage to create instead of consume. When someone devotes their best hours to shaping something meaningful, they step into a category few ever reach. Their work begins to attract attention that leads to opportunity. Their skills command respect. Their consistency builds trust. Their vision becomes magnetic. This is the quiet ascent that begins the moment someone decides their attention is too precious to waste. The world does not reward people because they are busy. It rewards them because they make something worth paying for. People who scatter their attention chase everything except the work that could change their life. They become overwhelmed, anxious, and directionless because energy without aim always collapses into chaos. But someone who concentrates energy becomes a force. Their thoughts gain weight. Their actions gain precision. Their results gain momentum. Focus separates creators from consumers, leaders from followers, builders from drifters, and that separation decides the trajectory of a lifetime. Every minute directed toward distraction fuels someone else's growth, but every minute directed toward your own mission compounds into leverage, authority, and long-term reward. The uncomfortable truth is that people often choose distraction because distraction demands nothing. Focus demands responsibility. Focus demands consistency. Focus demands discomfort. But discomfort is the birthplace of progress, and progress is the foundation of success. Those who embrace this truth rise in unimaginable ways because they operate from clarity rather than chaos. Your mind becomes powerful the moment you realize that value is created in silence, not noise. Creation requires solitude, intention, and the discipline to resist the world's constant pull. Each time you choose discipline over distraction, you strengthen the circuits responsible for long-term achievement. You transform your brain into a tool aligned with your future rather than chained to your impulses. This transformation is subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. You begin producing results that feel effortless because the mind finally serves your goals instead of sabotaging them. Delaying gratification reshapes the architecture of the mind. When someone resists the impulse for immediate reward, the prefrontal circuits fire with greater intensity. These circuits are responsible for discipline, planning, and long-term thinking. They are the very mechanisms that separate chaos from control. Each moment of restraint becomes a small workout for the brain. strengthening neural pathways that make consistency easier, clarity sharper, and decisions more aligned with the future rather than the moment. This is why people who delay gratification rise in life. They don't rely on talent or chance. They rely on the invisible advantage of neurological strength. Their mind becomes a place where impulse bows to intention. And because their decisions are shaped by vision rather than emotion, the trajectory of their life bends upward with quiet inevitability. This trait predicts financial success better than IQ because it measures something deeper. It measures the ability to stay loyal to a future self. Every time someone postpones a reward, they send a message to themselves. They declare that their future matters more than their cravings. That declaration creates identity. Once the mind internalizes that identity, it begins filtering choices through the lens of someone who builds rather than someone who escapes. Neurologically, this becomes a reinforcing loop. Delayed gratification triggers reduced limbic activity and increased executive function. The emotional brain quiets. The thinking brain takes the lead. Over weeks and months, this shift becomes the person's baseline mode of operation. They become calmer under pressure. They become sharper in moments of uncertainty. They become the type who sees 5 steps ahead while others chase their next hit of dopamine. This advantage compounds in every domain: health, relationships, business, purpose. The person grows into someone who acts from clarity rather than impulse. Research shows that people who can delay reward do more than resist temptation. They create entirely different futures. Immediate gratification creates predictable outcomes. The person gains nothing except temporary comfort, no skill, no depth, no leverage. But delayed gratification transforms discomfort into investment. Every act of restraint becomes a seed. The mind builds resilience from the act. The future gains opportunity from the delay. That is why high IQ cannot compete with this trait. Intelligence without discipline collapses into wasted potential. But discipline without high IQ still outperforms the majority of people because the person moves consistently and deliberately. They build momentum. They build habits. They build character. They build results. And years later, the world calls it luck, never realizing it was simply a person choosing long-term reward again and again. The ability to delay gratification is the closest thing to a superpower the average person can develop. It rewires perception. It changes how the person sees pleasure. It transforms suffering into strategy, and it builds a quiet confidence that does not need praise to feel certain. When someone delays gratification long enough, the brain stops craving the shortcut. It begins craving progress. The person becomes drawn to the challenge instead of escaping it. They feel more alive during effort than during comfort. That internal shift is priceless. It turns ambition into a habit rather than a burst. It turns consistency into identity rather than obligation. This rewiring is not loud. It is not glamorous. But it shapes futures with a precision few ever understand. People who resist immediate reward train themselves to think in terms of decades rather than moments. Decades are where transformation lives. Decades are where mastery grows. Decades are where empires are built. When someone delays gratification, they step out of the timeline of the distracted and into the timeline of the determined. Their patience becomes a weapon. Their restraint becomes leverage. While everyone else trades their time for momentary relief, the person who delays trades their moments for lifetime advantage. And that advantage compounds silently until it becomes undeniable. This is how people rise from nothing to influence. This is how they build stability while others chase stimulation. This is how they grow into the person who shapes their environment instead of reacting to it. When delayed gratification becomes a habit, it affects every choice. the person stops consuming for pleasure and starts consuming for purpose. They stop reacting and start responding. They stop chasing excitement and start chasing alignment. Their brain becomes a tool rather than a threat. The emotional spikes that once controlled them begin to fade. Long-term reward becomes their default desire. They trade urgency for patience, noise for clarity, distraction for depth. And as their mind becomes cleaner, the path ahead becomes clearer. This clarity gives them an advantage in decision-making. They invest better, they work better, they recover better, they grow better. And over time, their life reflects the architecture of a mind trained through restraint. People who master this trait understand something others often miss. Success is not a single moment. It is a long sequence of decisions made when nobody is watching. Each decision shapes the next. Each sacrifice compounds into ability. Each delay rewards the person with exponential gain. The person becomes trustworthy to themselves because they honor their own vision. That trust becomes fuel in moments of doubt. They follow through because their identity demands it. The mind becomes a disciplined machine, not rigid, not harsh, purposeful. They know what they want, and they are willing to wait, willing to work, willing to endure. The world often praises intelligence yet ignores the mental habits that create actual success. Intelligence without discipline creates paralysis. Discipline without intelligence creates progress, but discipline combined with average intelligence creates unstoppable momentum. This combination makes someone dangerous in the best way. They become consistent. They become reliable. They become undeniable. Their life rises because they repeat what works. Restraint gives them the patience to wait for powerful opportunities instead of chasing every distraction. They become the strategist rather than the gambler. They grow into someone who deserves the life they envision because they refuse to take shortcuts. Everything you allow into your mind becomes raw material for your future. Thoughts do not appear out of nowhere. They are assembled from the information you feed yourself. If you consume chaos, your thinking becomes chaotic. If you consume brilliance, your thinking becomes sharper. The mind is a sponge long before it is an engine. It absorbs tone, ideas, beliefs, habits, rhythms, and patterns from whatever you repeatedly expose it to. This is why curating inputs becomes the first act of self-direction. You cannot build clarity while feeding on confusion. You cannot build ambition while consuming distraction. You cannot build discipline while drowning in noise. Every book you read, every video you watch, every conversation you entertain becomes a seed that grows into decisions. And decisions, over time, shape destiny. When you curate your inputs, you take control of the architecture of your mind. That is why what you consume controls what you create, and this truth is the backbone of the secret of millionaire mindset. Every creator is shaped long before they produce anything. Their output reflects their intake. Those who fill their mind with low-quality information struggle to produce meaningful work. Their thoughts recycle fragments of the same recycled content the world already has. But those who immerse themselves in challenging ideas, disciplined voices, creative mastery, and deep perspectives begin generating higher quality thoughts automatically. Creation becomes easier not because they are gifted, but because they are properly fueled. The brain builds with whatever you hand it. Feed it depth, and it creates depth. Feed it distraction, and it creates chaos. When someone finally understands this, they become ruthless about what they allow through their mental gates. They treat attention as a sacred resource, not a casual one. That shift becomes a turning point that rewrites their trajectory. Inputs do more than shape ideas. They shape identity. When you continuously consume content that aligns with the person you want to become, the mind begins forming a self. image that mirrors that vision.